Mashallah chuds, since I'm so dedicated to making sure this channel has no cohesion or consistent theme, I'm gonna swerve away from videos about Monster Energy and talk about the most interesting topic for the average YouTube degenerate. Theology. Please don't click off. As you all know, I'm a Muslim penguin who lives in Iran, so I want you to know that I have absolutely no horse in the Christian theology race. I am, however, dedicated to the truth, and I will slap down logical errors whenever I see them so hard that you can call me Saint Nicholas. Today I'm going to be giving a complete, final, and thorough refutation of the Protestant heresy known as Sola Scriptura. I'm doing this in honour of Pope Leo XIV's promotion to the Bishop of Rome, which at the time of recording has just happened. Don't worry, my Augustinian brother, I'm gonna crush all about 800 million Protestants on earth for you. The author bros are your job, okay? Sola Scriptura is Latin for scripture alone. This means that Sola Scriptura is the principle that the only infallible, i.e. absolutely correct regarding faith and morals authority for Christians, is scripture. We must distinguish infallibility from inerrancy, which holds that scripture is absolutely correct on all matters, such as the scientific and the historical, which not all Protestants hold to. Sola Scriptura is Protestantism's most important doctrine, because it is the doctrine which informs all their other doctrines. Thus, the entirety of Protestant theology and belief is contingent upon the truth of Sola Scriptura. Therefore, it follows that if Sola Scriptura is not true, then the entirety of Protestantism as a phenomenon, at least it is commonly understood and practiced, must also be incorrect. If you think I'm overstating Sola Scriptura's importance, here's a quote from Protestant theologian R.C. Sproul. "The formal principle of the Reformation was the doctrine of Sola Scriptura. If that principle is denied, the whole of Protestantism collapses. Therefore, all Protestants, assuming they're intellectually honest, must either be convinced of the truth of Sola Scriptura or cease to be Protestant." Proof number 1. Sola Scriptura does not pass its own test. Sola Scriptura holds that Christians are only bound to believe those truths which are found within Scripture, whether explicitly or implicitly. This is what these people mean by the sufficiency of Scripture. Protestants hold that Christians are bound to believe in Sola Scriptura. In other words, Protestants believe that Sola Scriptura is a truth essential to the Christian faith. This means that Sola Scriptura, for it to be true, has to be found somewhere within Scripture. The problem with this is that we don't find Sola Scriptura within Scripture, either explicitly or implicitly. Implicit doctrines like the Trinity are supported by explicit statements which demand the existence of a certain doctrine, like the Trinity. Compare 2 Timothy 3:16 to 3:17 with Genesis 1:26. All scripture is inspired by God and is useful for teaching, for reproof, for correction, and for training in righteousness, so that everyone who belongs to God may be proficient, equipped for every good work. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." The latter creates a requirement for the doctrine of the Trinity, whereas the former does not create a requirement for Sola Scriptura. Implicit may be defined as suggested, but not directly expressed. But this definition is poor, as it seems to add to God's words. Better definition would be that implicit doctrines are always to be found in and are essentially connected with explicit statements within Scripture. All that we find in Scripture is the claim that Scripture is an infallible authority. Therefore, Sola Scriptura is false. Proof number 2. Either Protestantism is false or Sola Scriptura is. Protestant theology and belief relies on books like Hebrews and Esther being infallible, yet have no way of knowing if these books are infallible or not. This is because these books neither claim to be inspired nor possess any unique characteristics which single them out as being inspired. This is to be expected, because contrary to popular belief, infallibility is not a characteristic of an object, such as a piece of writing, but of a subject, such as a human being. Now, because infallibility is a supernatural gift, which is applied only to subjects, the only way to know if someone has been blessed with infallibility is for them to tell you. This means, in lieu of such a claim being contained within the article of Scripture itself, an authoritative oral tradition is required to be able to show whether any piece of possible Scripture was in fact written by an infallible author, which Sola Scriptura directly precludes. So either books of the Bible, such as the book of Hebrews, must be excluded from the canon of Scripture, thereby undermining roughly 500 years of Protestant theology and belief, or Sola Scriptura must be excluded from Protestantism, thereby falsifying the movement entirely. Therefore, Sola Scriptura is false. As you can see, Protestantism has no leg to stand on, so if one wishes to be a Christian, it's an option that shouldn't even be entertained given its clear and obvious doctrinal issues and logical sleights of hand. I'm sure the greatest Protestant apologist on earth and Secret Nosferatu needgod.net can come up with some kind of copium that totally proves my arguments to be false. I personally hope he does it. Then he can link up with Redeemed Zuma and they can prove that Thomas Aquinas was actually a proto-Protestant, and the Catholic Church just hasn't noticed for over basically 1,000 years. As always, Bismillah sheep.